So we've been doing orientation activities for the entering class for many years, and most of it is to get people out into northern Michigan and out into the landscape and enjoying themselves. But we added this wolf case, which is a case about whether the state of Michigan should allow a public hunt of wolves now that wolves have extended their population and they're extending their range in Michigan. We added it 3 years ago, and the idea was several things. One is we put the students into groupings that are across our fields of study and across international domestic students. Partly it's a way they start to get to know students across the school because we are a great community, not just confined in our individual fields. They're in a couple of teams over the course of the day, and so they get to meet others. Another benefit is that this is a really messy case. There's no easy answer to it. People have to wrestle with that. It shows all the complexity and interrelatedness of environmental and sustainability issues. And they sort of work on one side and then they go to the other side. We convene them first in stakeholder groups, so which are groupings arrayed by interests, such as hunting groups and groups that are Native American groups, etc. And we ask them to try to understand the role of an advocate. And then we have shift into policy analysis teams where their job is to take off a stakeholder hat and put on policy analysis hat to advise the chairman of the Natural Resources Commission. And it's a very different role. It's interesting to kind of contrast the role of an advocate versus a sort of neutral analyst and make the point that it's really important to understand the full range of interests from an advocacy perspective, because otherwise you can never solve the problem. It's also just now a classic kind of Upper Great Lakes issue, and it starts to engage in the region more and some of the culture of the region. And it's worked fairly well. It's dynamic, it's interactive, it gets faculty engaged with the students, facilitating groups. Well, actually the idea of the case and the idea of actually incorporating the case came from former students who came to the biostation. They suggested it, it's very current, and it just is one of these really thorny issues. To be honest, one of the reasons they suggested we do it is the entire curriculum is trying to go to much more active learning approaches, more engaged learning, more case-based learning. This was sort of a rich case that has elements of science, it has elements of policy, it has elements of behavior, it has elements of urban design even, kind of rural design rather. So the thought was it was relevant to most of the fields in the school so that students could relate to it. But it does push along our commitment to active teaching by modeling this right up front in orientation before people even get into class. I think it's not passive. I think everything we've learned about how people learn is they don't learn by sitting and listening to things. They learn best by active engagement in material and case-based teaching, which basically starts with it's a story, ends with a decision that a decision maker needs to make. It puts the students in that role, and it's a role that they may well play in their careers and in their professions. So it forces them to think through things much more richly than if they're served up kind of a set of bullet points on a PowerPoint through a faculty lecture.